What's the significance of Jesus being both God and man? It seems like in the early councils and the creeds, they really bent over backwards almost to make sure that this was true. And there were various groups, the Arians or whatever, who would deny part of that. So why is it that important?
What a question. What a question. I think right from the very start, when Jesus started his ministry, the fundamental question that was confronted by each person around them is, what is this man saying? It's just only God can forgive sins. Or other statements where the Father and I are one, or the statement in Matthew 11, and no one knows the Father. He's the only one that knows the Father. All these remarkable and astonishing statements that were made right throughout each of the Gospel witnesses. And I think even more profound in the Gospel of John, where it appears that Jesus did not mince his words, and he was saying emphatically, you're looking at God. And even when we go right back to the statement of John 1:29, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. It's not talking about the aspects of the law, right, that is taken away. It's about the apocalypse, the unveiling of God as this man, which is what is really the whole of the Gospel of John is talking about. And so here we have Jesus declaring himself to be from the bosom of the Father in intimate closeness, or John declares that, especially in the beginning of John, that such intimacy that no other human being has had. So right from that point, from the Gospel, the battle was on. Right, so it first begins with the nation of Israel pretty well, couldn't handle what was saying and drove him to the cross and killed him. But the final miracle that came about as a result of that was the resurrection, which really vindicated every single thing that he declared about himself from the resurrection all the way back, including to the miraculous conception and the incarnation. So it vindicated his whole life. So from that point on, we move to the day of Pentecost. And at the day of Pentecost, the Spirit was poured out. So not only did the apostles see this as a witness, they actually had an encounter with the God deep within their being as the Spirit was poured out on them, in them, and brought them to life everything that happened and brought meaning to everything that happened right throughout the whole ministry of Christ. And of course, Jesus ascended into back to be with his Father, right? But and with the pouring out of the Spirit, we have the ministry of the apostles, now immediately confronted by those who couldn't lay aside their own ideas about who God is, who God isn't, what he can and what he can't do, and what he must and must not be. They just couldn't lay that aside and focus on this one human being who was God come to us as man. So there was the witness of all these events right throughout the Gospels, right, which the apostles, as they ministered to the known world then, were trying to articulate to everyone. Of course, there was a great movement going on over the latter half of the first century, where many people came to Christ, not because of what the apostles said, but because they experienced something for themselves. And I think the primary example there is the Apostle Paul, when he talked about how he had an encounter and a revelation of the Son in me. when he speaks in Galatians 1. And he said, I didn't go to anybody else. I didn't go to the apostles. And he speaks of this being my revelation. And then as he preached the gospel, he emphasized the fact that he wanted these people to experience it for themselves. Let God tell you what happened and believe it for yourselves. Don't just believe me. God will show you. So the whole emphasis then, was to maintain the humanity of God in this man Jesus Christ. And as we moved into the 2nd century, and after all the apostles were martyred or died, then there was a battle of the church to uphold this witness of this God who has come to us as the man, Jesus of Nazareth. But they had to hold that together. And so what was happening is other belief systems were coming in and saying, well, according to what we believe, it can't happen like that. Jesus must have been something else. He must have been not quite human. Or maybe he was not quite God. Or maybe he was some sort of in-between. Maybe he was in Greek philosophy, they had the supreme being, and this supreme being created lesser gods. Right? Perhaps he was one of these created lesser gods. And so what the church witness was then was to maintain the humanity of God as this man Jesus Christ and to refute everything they said. Not because this was their opinion, they were just repeating, regurgitating what the apostles said and testifying that to the world. And so this was the ongoing battle right up to the time of the Nicene Council, when we had the Arian controversy, when Arius said there must have been a time when he was not. And of course, the most miraculous thing I believe about the Nicene Council is that we have bishops from all over the known world called to this one place in Nicaea. It's not like today where we can have communication with each other at an instant. These people were thousands of kilometres or thousands of miles apart, and they all came together to discuss how they were going to fight against this Arian controversy and come up with a Nicene Creed and uphold the gospel as was taught by the apostles. And the miraculous thing is even though these people came from all walks of life, 318 bishops I think there were, along with their entourage, there was around about 2,000 people at this conference, and 99% of them agreed on the Nicene Creed, and less than 1% were against it. And that's a miracle in itself, that we can have people from all parts of the known world who'd never spoken to each other come together and agree on something that was, they believed, was what the apostles taught. And that was that God came to us as the man Jesus Christ. And we're faced with the same battle today. So what we have to endeavour to do is to stand alongside the ancient church, going right back to the Gospels themselves and how the church fathers understood the Gospels. And you can pretty well see a linking of arms between the Gospel of John, Polycarp, Irenaeus, all the way through to the Nicene Church. And there's a line of history going all the way up to today. And the battle and the controversies are the same. There are no new heresies. No new heresies. Torrance would say we're just battling the same old heresies dressed up in new clothes. And so what we must maintain is that God came to us as the man Jesus of Nazareth. Does that answer your question?
Does a good job. Well done.